During the years 1941 to 1945, Nazi Germany carried out one of the most systematic and brutal genocides in human history. Millions of Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, political prisoners, and others were persecuted, deported, and murdered. Entire towns and villages were emptied, streets became silent, homes were confiscated, and synagogues and cultural centers destroyed. Families were forced into overcrowded ghettos, surrounded by barbed wire and guards, living in constant fear. Starvation, disease, and exposure claimed lives daily, particularly among the elderly, the sick, and children. Malnutrition and overcrowding made survival a daily struggle, and the threat of deportation to concentration or extermination camps was ever present. Following the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, mobile killing units known as Einsatzgruppen carried out mass executions in towns and forests. Entire communities were rounded up. Men were often separated from women and children, ordered to dig pits, and then executed by gunfire. Bodies fell into the graves layer by layer, sometimes covering whole fields. Children were frequently killed alongside their parents, and the process was repeated village after village. These mass shootings claimed over 1 million lives. Before extermination camps became the central mechanism of murder, concentration and extermination camps such as Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec combined forced labor, starvation, and industrial-scale killing. Prisoners were stripped of clothing, assigned numbers instead of names, and housed in overcrowded, unsanitary barracks. Hygiene was minimal, water scarce, and disease spread rapidly. Starvation weakened prisoners, making forced labor unbearable, and those unable to work were sent directly to gas chambers or executed by shooting squads. Children were among the most vulnerable victims. Many were separated from their parents immediately upon arrival. Some were killed instantly, while others were subjected to forced labor or medical experiments. Those who survived faced starvation, cold, and exhaustion. Clothing was inadequate against harsh winters, and bodies were weakened by malnutrition. Children witnessed the deaths of parents, siblings, and friends. Medical experiments included testing reactions to disease, sterilization procedures, and hypothermia, often performed without anesthesia, causing immense suffering and death. The daily routine in camps was marked by terror. Roll calls could last hours in freezing weather. Prisoners were publicly beaten to maintain fear, and any attempt to resist or hide food was punished with death. Hunger, cold, exhaustion, and brutality became constants. Many perished not from direct execution, but from the relentless conditions. The Holocaust was executed with systematic efficiency. Railways transported millions to camps, records were meticulously kept, and orders came from the highest levels of the Nazi hierarchy. Victims were dehumanized, stripped of names, reduced to numbers and files, and communities were erased. Executioners acted under orders, witnesses were coerced, and ordinary human lives were destroyed with bureaucratic precision. Liberation arrived as Allied forces advanced in 1944 and 1945. Camps were discovered in states of unimaginable horror. Survivors emerged emaciated, sick, and traumatized. Empty barracks, abandoned belongings, and the silent remains of the dead told the story of atrocities that words can scarcely convey. Many survivors were children who had lost families, homes, and any trace of normal life. The psychological scars were immense as the sights, sounds, and smells of mass death remained vivid in memory. The Holocaust is not merely history, it is a warning and a lesson. Remembering the victims, millions of men, women, and children is a moral imperative. The suffering from starvation, cold, disease, forced labor, mass shootings, gassing, and medical experiments shows the darkest capacity of human cruelty. Education, memorials, and testimonies ensure that the horrors are not forgotten. Humanity must confront these facts, honor the memory of the victims, and remain vigilant to prevent such atrocities from occurring again. The evidence, the camps, the mass graves, the photographs, and survivor testimonies cannot be ignored. The reality is undeniable. Entire communities were erased, millions of lives extinguished, and the world forever scarred by the atrocities committed. Remembering this history is essential to preserving human dignity, understanding the consequences of hatred, and ensuring that such darkness never descends upon humanity again. Beyond the immediate horrors of the camps and mass executions, the day-to-day reality for prisoners was a relentless struggle against despair. The barracks were overcrowded, often housing hundreds in a single room with no privacy, minimal ventilation, and floors covered with straw that quickly became soiled. Disease spread with terrifying speed, with typhus, dysentery, and pneumonia claiming thousands of lives. Prisoners who showed signs of illness were often removed from the ranks, sent directly to the gas chambers, or left to die from neglect. In this environment, starvation was constant. A thin soup or a small piece of bread per day was all that sustained the living. Hunger led to weakness, illness, and a diminished will to survive, while bodies wasted away under the weight of forced labor and abuse. Children were especially vulnerable, unable to understand why they had been torn from families, deprived of basic needs, and exposed to constant terror. Many were sent to extermination immediately upon arrival. Others survived, only to endure the harshest labor and experimentation. Medical experiments were conducted with cruel indifference. Children and adults alike were subjected to tests of infectious diseases, extreme cold, chemical and biological exposure, sterilization, and other inhumane procedures, often without anesthesia. The pain, suffering, and trauma inflicted were unimaginable, and the survival rate for those subjected to such experiments was extremely low. The psychological terror was constant. Prisoners were forced to witness executions, suffer public beatings, and live with the omnipresent threat of sudden death. Every day was a struggle for life against hunger, disease, exposure, and human cruelty. Families were torn apart, parents separated from children, and children orphaned within hours of arrival. The camp became a place where humanity itself was stripped away, leaving behind numbers, uniforms, and skeletal forms of once living people. The liberation of camps revealed the full extent of this horror. Allied forces found survivors emaciated to the point of near death, unable to stand or care for themselves. Barracks were empty of those who had perished, belongings scattered, and the air thick with the stench of decay and death. Children emerged into a world they no longer recognized, orphaned, traumatized, and scarred by the atrocities they had endured. The evidence of the Holocaust is both overwhelming and undeniable. Photographs, mass graves, survivor testimonies, and the very structures of the camps bear witness to systematic, industrialized murder. The atrocities were not isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated plan of genocide, executed by bureaucracy and ideology. Remembering the Holocaust is a duty, a moral responsibility, and a lesson for humanity. It is essential to bear witness to the suffering, the starvation, the cold, the disease, the forced labor, the shootings, the gassings, and the experiments, to honor the millions of victims whose lives were destroyed. This history serves as a stark reminder of the capacity for cruelty when hatred, prejudice, and indifference are allowed to dominate. Education, memorials, and testimony ensure that future generations will understand the magnitude of the horrors and the importance of standing against any form of oppression. The Holocaust is not only a record of the past, but also a warning for the present and the future. When human lives are devalued, when cruelty is normalized, when fear is weaponized, the darkest chapters of history can repeat themselves. By remembering, by confronting the truth, and by teaching it faithfully, the memory of the victims can be honored and the lessons of history preserved. Every life lost, every child starved, every family destroyed demands that humanity never forget and never allow such darkness to rise again.